City Planners is a poem by Margaret Atwood. It was first published in 1964 in her poetry collection, The Circle Game. The poem takes place in a very tidy neighborhood. It's a monotonous suburb. It presents humanity's desire for conformity, the rigid control that we have over the environment, the desire for us to have a very straight, stringent life, very well planned. However, the environment that we're looking at is stifling. It is ultimately futile. In fact, the narrator of the poem actually argues that humanity's desire to stave off the essential hysteria of the world in itself is a form of madness. The poem also targets the misuse of Earth's resources by city planners, those who plan these suburbs to perfection. Here, these are people who are presented as scheming humans who selfishly try to force other humans and fix them into an order, into the natural world, purely out of vanity and purely out of greed. The City Planners is a poem that begins with the narrator cruising or driving down the suburban streets on a sunny Sunday in August. We are bothered by how intensely controlled every single element in the poem is. Everything is superbly ordered. The houses are in their perfect little rows. They are neat. There are cleanly pruned trees planted out confidently out in the street. This reflects how straight the ground is. There is not a different line to be seen. It is as if they are scolding their car for having a dent in their door. There is no yelling sound of children playing. There is no sound of glass breaking. There is nothing more unexpected than the very, very sensible order of a very mechanical lawnmower and in a very controlled manner as it tidies up the demoralized grass. We keep hearing that the grass is discouraged. It is not allowed to grow because a lawnmower is there immediately just as it grows a little more than what is considered to be necessary by the city planners. But even as the driveways try to avoid any signs of chaos because it's so perfectly uniform, like for instance the roofs are aligned perfectly, it shields people away from the scorching sunlight above. There are certain things despite all of this perfection that peeks through all of this order. This includes the stench of spilled oil. It hangs about in the garages. It's like a lurking illness underneath that you can't really put a finger on. There is a little paint smear on the brick. It's popping up like an unexpected bruise. A plastic hose is curled up like a snake waiting to pounce. The creepily unwavering gaze of the broad windows. As we see, the vegetation that we also see in this neighborhood is very concrete. It is very man-made. So all these things actually give a very quick glimpse into into this perfect world that exists behind the walls of such houses. One day, these houses is also going to crack. The paint is one day going to peel. The oil is going to be spilled. Order is going to gather up in these garages. So as imperceptibly as a massive, ever-moving bodies of ice that no one's paying any attention to. So during this time, what are the city planners doing? Who is the city planner? It is the face of the government. It is the face of the capitalist. It is the face of all those who want an artificial perfection to creep into the lives of individuals living in that area. Where they find unmapped regions and they bring order into the lives of these regions, which are hidden from one another because each person is in their personal snowstorm. So they're approximate in different directions. North, is it east, is it west? And they draw impermanent lines and they street them like very concrete wooden boundaries onto a wall of the snow-filled air that surrounds them. So they are mapping this terrifying chaos of the orderly suburb into the wild, fearless snow. So one of the central themes of the city planners is one that of order, control and madness. The city planners is a critique of human beings' obsession with controlling their environment. They need to control everything. So the poet speaker actually finds the suburbia as it's a monotonous interpretation of life. It has orderly houses, it has manicured lawns, it has a weird silence. It is stifling, it is strange, it is utterly unnatural. At the same time, the speaker tells us that the makers of these human sanity in fact leads to our own insanity. And how do we do that? Because this is an illusion. This perfectness is an illusion we choose to live in. People may strive to make their worlds perfect, but it is less than perfect. It is not neat. It is not always rational. Beneath the surface of these perfectly manicured life that we create, it is breaking, it is peeling, it is moving. So the stiff veneer of order, it is liable to crack, and it will crack, because the need for such control, at the end of the day, the poet says, will lead to panic. So while driving through the suburban streets, our poet is not happy, because she constantly feels a weight downing upon her, because she also feels a need to conform, and she feels ashamed of the dent in her car door. So while the people living in the suburbs may think of the lack of shouting of the streets, the lack of children on the streets as a sign of peace, it is a sign of order. It actually talks us about our own attempts at bringing unnatural order into our lives. So this rigidity, this control eventually leads to panic. At the end of the day, the speaker tells us about the smell of spilled oil. It hangs in the air as a faint sickness. It lingers in the garages. It suggests that while everybody looks perfect in the suburb, there is something rotten beneath the surface. There is also a landscape behind or under the future cracks in the plaster, where the poet is talking to us about the future of the suburb, which will eventually lead way to degeneration, because that is how time works and that is how life works. Thus, the poet tells us that human desire and human beings' desire to impose an artificial level of control in the environment itself is a kind of sanity. It is in fact insanity that leads us to make what is seemingly sane atmospheres for us. The second theme is humanity's destruction of the environment. We see that the rigid order, the conformity, the unnecessary walls of concrete, trees that are cut down and manicured to fit specific distances, specific sizes, all shows human beings' desire to control nature and the amount of harm that he is inflicting on the environment. For one thing, the poem implies that suburbia's neat and tidy surface, it shields people from the sun. It shields people from the wind. And at the same time, it cuts them off completely from the natural elements that could be a source of joy, that could be a source of sanity for people. It is not necessary that you need to prune trees or live in such ordered environments to bring sanity into your life. In fact, one could argue that it does the exact opposite. This constant desire to be ordered, this constant desire to conform is in fact one of the reasons for insanity, and this also leads to damage of the environment.